你说我们农管算什么？你们交管管不了的，我们管。
So please tell me, what is the purpose of our esteemed rural management? We are entrusted with overseeing matters which traffic police and urban management cannot. Empowered by royal prerogative, we act first and report later. This video has been circulating wildly online, bringing widespread attention to China's new profession of rural management officer. Known as Nongguan in Chinese, their official title is Chinese Agriculture Comprehensive Administrative Law Enforcement Personnel. According to Chinese authorities, there are already 2,564 rural management institutions established across the country, with over 82,000 agricultural law enforcement officers employed and on duty. In Hubei province alone, there are already 5,000 rural management officers. On April 15, the Chinese Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs stated that the jurisdiction of rural management officers spans several domains, including seeds, pesticides, veterinary drugs, feed, agriculture machinery, animal and plant quarantine, agriculture products quality and safety, and fishery administration. Primarily, their effort focus on combating counterfeit and substandard seeds, pesticides, and veterinary drugs. They do not, however, interfere with every aspect of life, nor do they interfere the ordinary agricultural production and daily routines of farmers. Nevertheless, upon visiting the website of a country's rural management bureau, we discovered that their administrative power is actually quite extensive, covering an array of activities in rural areas such as farming, harvesting, vegetable and fruit cultivation, agricultural machinery and tools, breeding, planting, small businesses, vendors, and even matters concerning the front and back of the houses. Indeed, the very term rural administrative law enforcement possesses the power to overrule the common people. Mainland Chinese media outlet NetEase has reported that as of April, some rural management officers have initiated inspections in rural communities, prohibiting residents from planting vegetables in front of their homes and hang laundry within their courtyards. At the end of March, rural management in the Northeast initiated the collection of property management fees, commencing with garbage fees. This is a screenshot from a WeChat group of villages in northeast China. At the end of March, the newly established local rural management department began issuing fees, collecting notices to villages, and by early April, they had collected 85% of the fees. For everyone registered as a resident, it is 5 cents per day per person, amounting to $18.25 a year. Many villagers feel compelled to pay the property management fees and can only privately complain about the injustice. It doesn't seem like much now, but once the fees are introduced, who can control how much they will increase in the future? Just look at the rural cooperative medical insurance, which started at 10 yuan and is now 350 yuan. In mid-April, a resident from Heilongjiang in northeast China posted that the rural management officers in his brother's village visited his brother's fish pond 3 times, forbidding the planting of corn and beans by the pond with the reason that the yellow leaves in autumn would be unsightly. His brother asked if they couldn't plant corn and beans, what would they eat? The rural management officers replied that it was a separate matter. If they said not to plant, then he should not plant. It is often said that if all else fails, one can always return to the countryside and become a farmer. However, starting from May, the bar for farming has been raised as well. Agriculture certificates are now required. Pesticide application need a certificate. Livestock rearing calls for a rearing certificate. Planting fruits, vegetables, and grains require planting certificate. A person's grandpa who has been farming all his life failed the agriculture certificate examination. Rural management officers in Puyang, Henan insisted that the old man's pesticide application was uneven. Netizens from Henan ridicule the situation as lifelong farmers are now being judged by those who have never farmed a day in their lives. Rural management officers objected, claiming they know how to farm. They immediately demonstrated the standard farming posture in the fields. From now on, Chinese farmers must plow the fields this way or face fines. Farmers argue that this approach may be possible, but the harvest will be poor. If then, who will be held responsible? People shouldn't also underestimate the importance of these agriculture certificates. Without them, you cannot plant rice, vegetable, or fruit, nor can you raise chickens or cattle. If caught working in the fields without a certificate, your farming tools may be confiscated. Like this old man driving the agriculture machinery, he was seen by the agriculture management. They checked the man's ID number and found he did not have a permit to operate, so they fined him on the spot. Despite recent repeated statements from the governing ministry that the mission of rural management is to combat counterfeit and substandard seeds, pesticides, and veterinary drugs without interfering with farmers' normal lives, there have been online reports of officers entering villages with nets to capture any stray chicken and ducks under the pretext of improving the rural appearance. By April 18th, rural management had begun seizing villages' cattle and sheep. The Chinese government recognizes that the harsh and overzealous enforcement by rural management officers might be very well incite resistance from the farming community. Consequently, these officials have been outfitted with an array of military-grade equipment. Not only do rural management officers have uniforms, but they also possess enforcement vehicles, boats, drones, and recording devices, boasting a comprehensive arsenal of effectively dealing with farmers. Smaller accessories include electric batons, walkie-talkies, GPS locators, night vision goggles, flashlights, covert evidence gathering devices, cameras, recording pens, signal jammers, and stab-proof vests, making them formidably armed. Take signal jammers as an example. They are designed to prevent farmers from accessing the internet and seeking assistance during enforcement operations. High-powered flashlights have the capacity to temporarily blind farmers, while stab-proof vests are worn for obvious reasons. Night vision goggles are specifically employed for rural management officers to conduct covert operations in villages under the cover of darkness. GPS locators primarily serve the purpose of overall deployment and coordination of rural management forces. Netizens have even jokingly suggested that the only thing missing is Elon Musk's Starlink. Historically, during the Great Leap Forward in the late 50s, a similar force existed, tasked with addressing disobedient farmers. Subsequently, as the Great Famine unfolded in China, this team was renamed the Grain Search Team, responsible for arresting those hiding grains or foraging for wild vegetables in the field. In the following spring, the team was rebranded as the Joint Defense Team, who specialized in stopping farmers at village entrances, preventing them from seeking food elsewhere. Post-reform and opening up of China, this team branched into two separate entities, the Urban Management Bureau, commonly known as Nongguan, and Vehicle Transportation Management, or Yuanguan. The urban management force primarily comprises migrant workers hailing from rural areas, with limited education and reliant on fines and confiscation to maintain their income. These individuals have been involved in an increasing number of aggressive incidents on Chinese streets. As these poorly educated and unqualified individuals venture into rural areas to manage agriculture, they lack the ability to effectively oversee seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and veterinary drugs, and combat counterfeiting. However, in order to secure their salaries, they resort to imposing random fines and confiscations. Presently, China's diplomatic and financial economy faces considerable challenges. The Chinese government's real source of power stems from the unwavering support of a largely unquestioning mass of people, mainly farmers. However, if the government's rural management continues its reckless and intrusive tactics, encroaching on the rights and interests of farmers, these farmers will undoubtedly resist. It is anticipated that in the not-so-distant future, the narrative will shift from rural management officers oppressing ordinary farmers to farmers banding together, triggering various collective incidents throughout the country.